Cell is based on a Stephen King novel that was released back in 2006. The film is set to be released next month, though certain video-on-demand services have early showings now. Anyway, Cell was a story that Stephen King wrote based on his own fear of cell phones. It's also a tribute to the work of George A. Romero, to whom he collaborated with in the past and who he dedicated the book to. It's a pretty basic story, especially by King novel standards, about a signal being sent out throughout all cell phones which disrupts people's brains and turns them into raged-out zombie-like creatures. Kind of like 28 Days Later. Anyway, the novel was somewhat unique in that it did not have the typical long wind-up that King novels had, and instead went straight into the action, with the apocalypse happening on, like, the third page. The book was okay. It was not the greatest idea King ever had. It was written well, but some of it made it clear that King just doesn't own a cell phone and he doesn't know how they work. This film's early release on video on demand has led to it getting some really terrible reviews. But again, I'll nod and smile at the consensus and then come up with my own thoughts. I'm not saying I never agree with critics' consensus. I agree that Warcraft sucked. Just saying that sometimes I gotta have an unpopular opinion. Sometimes. And this is one of those times. Cell is without a doubt a B movie. It has a clearly low budget, and aside from securing Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack, who also appeared in the disappointing adaptation of King's 1408, the background actors seem to be the type that populate movies that go straight to television. But, that being said, as far as B movies go, Cell is certainly not bad, and in some ways it is better than the flawed novel. The screenplay was written by King himself, along with Adam Malika, a veteran of lower-rent horror films, and in a lot of ways to me it feels like a do-over of the novel, streamlining the plot. While 1408 lost me when it bloated up the simple story with a lot of extra bullshit familial drama and an entirely unnecessary middle section, Cell cuts out the parts of the novel that drag and keeps only what sticks with the theme. Cusack plays an estranged father trying to reach his son with the cell phone apocalypse as a backdrop. Jackson plays a character that in the novel was simply the old gay guy, but in the film he acts as the voice of reason and worldly experience. Also along is Isabel Furman, who plays Alice, a traumatized teenage girl that tags along for the ride. And without giving any spoilers, the end of her character arc is a lot different and a lot less frustratingly random than in the novel. Speaking of endings, the ending of the novel made it clear that King didn't have an ending. And while the movie still ends in a somewhat ambiguous way, it's more in line with King's style than the novel, which went into confusing navel-gazing toward the end. The film's only real flaw is the low production values, but it works better as a B-movie than it might have with $200 million behind it, as the low-rent trappings work towards legitimizing the absolutely ridiculous premise. So here, in this case, I have to disagree with most critics. Cell works. It's not a great film that you absolutely have to see, but, well, I've seen many Stephen King adaptations, and while it won't share space with Shawshank Redemption or The Mist, it's a far cry from trash like Riding the Bullet or Graveyard Shift. I'll give Cell a 7 out of 10.